Welcome back. On our show today, let's sit down and talk to Salma Hindy, an engineer by day and a comedian by night. What's her story? How did she get here? Well, let's find out. Salma, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I know by profession you're an engineer and you just finished your master's in engineering, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So how did you go from engineering to, like, at what point did comedy come into your life?
Okay, so I feel like comedy has sort of always been a part of my personality or a part of like what makes me who I am. But I would say that now in hindsight, like looking back, I feel like that part of my personality or that part of my character really sort of came out in middle school and high school. So I just thinking back, I went to Islamic school my whole life.
Okay.
And, you know, it's really great, like, we can talk about Islamic school another time, but something that is common to most Islamic schools is that they're very underfunded just in general.
Yeah.
There's limited facilities, and at the same time, there's very strict intergender, I would say, like, separation. So, like, girls are separate, guys are separate. And so when I was in high school, almost every single day during recess, there was really nothing for us to do, the girls, because the guys would just take over the gym and then we couldn't like go in there or anything like that. So we would literally just sit down in recess in our classroom, just like eating lunch, and it was very boring.
Yeah.
So in an attempt to sort of like lighten the mood or make this part of the day as entertaining as possible, all of the girls, like my friends and I, would sort of sit down and then we would start like storytelling, or we would like, you know, imitate like certain teachers or something like that, and we just make it really entertaining for ourselves. And I think that's why. And then even in high school, I was always one to finish my work as quickly as possible, and so I loved being involved in as many things as possible, like extracurricular activities. So my friends and I would always make a lot of like parody videos about, I don't know, certain movies, this and that, for projects or for different committees or something in high school. So I would probably say that's where I started to really tap into, you know, comedy itself. But at the time, like, you wouldn't label it as comedy. But I remember like watching SNL or Whose Line Is It Anyways? I used to love Whose Line Is It Anyways, but I remember watching SNL and being like, oh, I could be funnier than them or something like that. But I would have never like pictured, you know, the industry, like it was just something so far away, and you know.
Did you find, just picking up on the point where you said, you know, genders were segregated and sort of the guys took over the gym kind of thing. So did you find that in school you had outlets, I guess mainly in Islamic school as well, did you have an outlet to express yourself in this way, or was it like, or did you find that it was limited kind of thing?
It's definitely limited, for sure, within the arts. Even I remember when I was in grade 11 and 12, the MIST had just started, so the Muslim Interscholastic School Tournament. And that was incredible because it was Muslims from all different high schools coming together and competing in various activities within the arts, within sciences, math, etc. But that was the first time I would say that we were introduced to the concept of spoken word, which is not something that was ever done before. But I remember in high school, I used to love, like, I would love spoken word, and there was debates and a whole bunch of other stuff, but I was way too terrified to do that myself. So I remember I joined so many competitions, and I won second place overall in both those years, but only doing, like, I would say behind the scenes, quieter competitions. So like Math Olympics, Quran, or scrapbooks, like stuff that nobody would see, because I was just way too nervous to be out in the public, even though I think I was more than capable if I worked on it, but it was just such a, like, I wasn't there with my self-esteem, I would say. Did you, like, from a family, so did your family know that you were, like, you know, the joker, it sounds like, or like used to have this side to it, or was this kind of like your school recess identity, and this is Salma, like? Definitely. Like, so who I am at home versus outside is such a different person, even probably now to a certain degree. So at school, I'm always super energetic. I finish my work on time. I like disrupt the class. I get kicked out.
You got kicked out?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Nice.
A lot. And like,
you don't seem to fit that image, but okay.
It's just because, like, I would finish my work quickly and then I just would not stop talking, and the teachers were like, "Can you just for 1 minute?" And I was like, and yeah. So, but getting kicked out was like it didn't happen often. I know what you mean. But yeah, but then like so that was the school side of me, and so my parents would get called sometimes like, oh, you know, like your daughter is disrupting classes. So they knew that like that was going on. But then at home, I would come home, I'm super quiet, just do my homework right away, finish that, watch some TV, go upstairs, sleep. Like I was very, very quiet, always keep to myself. So in a way, and I think this sort of played out later with comedy and me going public and stuff, is that my parents don't really have an idea of like just how social I am. Or
like your parents and your siblings, or just your parents?
No, just my parents. My siblings, maybe in the beginning, but as I got older and the age gap between us started to close and our friend circles start to merge and we hang out with each other outside of the house, they definitely
sort of saw.
Yeah, and they know me a lot better and they see me in a lot of different settings. Whereas my parents, so that's a really big thing. My parents don't see me with my friends, or they don't see me in social settings.
Yeah.
And if I am with them in social settings, it's more of like a family setting, and I'll be quiet. I'll be my quieter, like calmer self in those settings.
So how did you? Okay, so that's the life and image that you had at home.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it's clear that you still were interested in sciences, so I'm guessing that's why you pursued engineering.
Yes.
It's still a passion.
Yeah.
So let's go from, because lately you've been in the public scene a lot. There've been articles about you, like Globe and Mail, CBC, etc.
Yeah.
So how did you, what was it in, was it, I don't know if it was in university, or at what point did you decide, okay, this is a career as well that I'd like to pursue? Like, did something happen that sort of pushed you? Like, what was it?
Yes. So my whole life, my friends have always been telling me, oh my God, you should do comedy, like you're so funny, this and that. And I'm always like, okay, it's part of the friendship contract.
Yeah,
like,
you kind of just say no,
yeah. So I never believed them. But then I think it was, okay, so it was like a mixture of a few things. So Zarqa Nawaz, who is the writer and producer of Little Mosque on the Prairie, which was the first ever Muslim sitcom to air, I would say, in the West.
Yeah.
So she's actually related to my family. Her cousin is married to my sister. And so she was visiting from out of town. She was giving a talk.
Yeah.
And my sister invited her over to her house, and then she invited me over. She's like, oh, somebody should talk to her. And then I remember going up to her and telling her, I have two really big passions in my life, and I'm just trying to like decide, it's either to like be a trauma surgeon and like go to Gaza or Syria, or like the complete other end of the spectrum, which is like to be the first hijabi Mindy Kaling, right? And then she was like, I think you should just like stick to engineering. And I was like, oh, ouch, okay. And then that was like the beginning of our talk, like that night. So then I just went into the kitchen, and then after, you know, like we had everybody ate and stuff, me and my sister were just kind of chilling, and then it's just natural. My sister's super funny. I would say she's the funniest one of all my siblings. And then her and I together, we just like build up on our stories and stuff. So Zarqa was sitting, and then we had started to tell Zarqa about the suitors that my parents bring home for me.
Oh,
and,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, and we started to tell her like how my parents are so desperate to like get me married and all that stuff. And so we're telling her story after story, and the stories themselves are ridiculous, and then us on top of that. And so she's just like sitting there like listening and watching. And then the next day I offered to give her a ride to another event that she had. So I picked her up, and then she was like, you need to do comedy. And I was like, what?
Where is this coming from?
I know. I was like, somebody from the industry is like giving me, I was like, are you just going to cast me in your next movie? Like, I know nothing about anything, right? And then she was like, yeah, you need to do comedy. And I was like, okay, but like how and what? She's like, you need to do stand-up. You definitely need to do stand-up. And I was like, there's no comedy that I want to do less than stand-up. Like, it's just so intimidating.
Well, and you're very much on the spot, right? And that's kind of what you ran away from your whole life.
Exactly. It was like everything I was trying to avoid in high school, in university. Like, I never want to be in the spotlight. Also, any stand-up comedy I had ever seen live was sort of in an MSA setting, and it was just always so awful and just so brutal.
Not that funny.
Yeah, not funny at all, and the audience didn't enjoy it. And I was like, wow, I would not wish that upon anyone. So like, why would I want to do it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like very hesitant. I was not, and I think this was around February that she told me this. Then I think I met her the next day, and she was like, you have to do it. I'm telling you, like, that's how you sort of establish yourself as an artist, as a comedian, and then like people in the industry will see you, etc. And I was like, okay, let me just like think about it. So this was around, I think, February-ish. And then she came back in March for the first ever Max Gala. And Max had brought a comedian. This is Noor Hadidi, who I had mentioned earlier, who's one of the Muslim comedians downtown. And so Zarqa was like just so excited. So she like took me and basically like threw me at Noor and was like, talk to her. She's thinking of doing stand-up. Talk to her about this, whatever. So I spoke to Noor about some of my concerns. I was like, you know, I don't drink, and the venues and the times and all these things. I'm really, and you know, vulgar comedy, all that stuff. Like I don't swear, all of that I'm really concerned about. And so she told me like she also has the same values, and she sent me some articles, and she sent me a list of like open mics in Toronto.
And open mics, are you kind of just go and perform?
Yes, open mics are places where you can perform either to an audience or other comedians and stuff. And and that's like where you get started. So then I was like, okay. So I just thought about it for a bit. I mulled over it for a bit, and then Zarqa came back into town, I think in August, and she was
this
like,
is two or 3 years ago, or
this was in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was like, did you do it, or did you do anything? And I was like, no. And then she just ripped me apart. She was like, you know what your problem is? She's like, you don't have any grit. She was like, you have talent, but you have no grit. And you're not going to succeed if you don't have any grit. She's like, my husband always tells me, like, people who have talent, they, or don't have much talent, they make up for it with grit, blah, blah, blah. But you, and she's just like going off. She's like, I'm not going to tell you anymore. Like, you need to decide to do this, whatever. And I'm such a tough love kind of person. Like, tough love works on me for sure. Just from my oldest sister, like the dynamic of my family, like it definitely works on me. So I was like, okay, like I just need time to like mentally and emotionally prepare, because it's such a big thing, like in terms of insecurities and just
and also you're just putting yourself out there, right? And it's like for the first time, so it's
exactly,
I'm sure it's intense.
Yeah. So then after that, I told a close friend about it, and she was really into comedy, and she was like, let's go see Trevor Noah live. So we saw him live for the first time, I think in September 2016. And I was like, okay, like it was my first time seeing comedy live. I was like, or just in general.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I could do this. Like I'm noticing patterns and stuff in the way that comedians speak. Then I found a place downtown, and I was like, okay, I like stalked it on Instagram and stuff too. And I was like, I feel like this is a nice place to do a first set. And then my friend and I went there, and we watched a show. And then I just spoke to the producer, and I was like, I have a curfew, so I need to leave, but like, can I get booked on your show? And he was like, sure, just add me on Facebook. So then,
so just like that, you approached somebody,
yes,
and you were like, I want to do a piece.
Yeah, I want to do it. And then he's like, have you ever performed before? And I was like, no. And he was like, okay, that's fine. Like he was like kind of let down. But then, so then I chose a time. I chose November. That's the first time I ever went up in 2016. And I chose a time that was like, giving me enough time to sort of prepare something.
Yeah.
But not like too much time that I would, forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, then the first time I went up was then, and the feedback was really great. But yeah, I would say that that's definitely how I got started, was for sure Zarqa and that push, and just sort of knowing someone like in the industry who was giving you an objective perspective, and she's not afraid to tell you if you're bad or like she fully told me in the beginning, you should just stick to biomed, and I was like, okay.
You're like, okay, gotcha, I will do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So did you pursue any formal training, or was this just kind of like you did your own thing and then you?
So the first time I went up, which was in November, I just went up on my own. So I think
like you prepped the material by yourself,
yes,
rehearsed it, and then went on.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to come up with 5 minutes. That's like the standard set. And for me, in the beginning, I was like, okay, picture yourself in a room filled with probably mostly white people. What are you going to tell them? Where are you going to start? What are you going to tell them about yourself? So that's sort of where I started. I started to tell them about myself, my family, my upbringing, me coming here. So my first set was very like family focused.
And you leveraged on material that you were comfortable with, that
yes,
you wanted to share, and it was about you, so it would have been a little easier, right?
Exactly, yeah. So because it was very personal, it was easy to come up with stuff. And then I went up, and the first time I went up, I was like so nervous. So I invited a small group of friends that I was very comfortable doing horribly in front of, so that they can like console
Put them
me
at the front just in case.
Yeah, exactly. And also who wouldn't be like embarrassed by like if I did really bad. But yeah, it went really well, and everyone was like, wow, we can't believe this is your first time, and that was super encouraging. And then I sent that to Zarka, and she was like, that's great, like, I would recommend taking a class or something to sort of learn more about it. So then I signed up to take a stand-up level 1 class at Second City, Toronto, and that started in January of 2017. And then the second time I went up on stage was actually in January. So it was kind of like simultaneous. Like I had gone up on stage twice, but then I started the class. And then the class went from January to March, and it was like a weekly class for 3 hours. And that was a great class because it taught me a lot about the more of like the actual art itself, what a premise is. It's like an emotion attached to a subject. And then a bit is basically just like a premise or a bunch of jokes about a particular premise. And then a set is a combination of various bits. And then just sort of how to even come up with them and different techniques and whatnot. A lot of writing. Our instructor would make us write at least 10 new premises every week, and then write like 3 bits on those. Wow. And then it was super, super intimidating, and just like you're so vulnerable because every week the instructor would just put you on the spot, and even though there's only 10 people in the class, but he would just make you stand up in front of them and run your new material in front of them. And you literally wrote like that morning. It's so intimidating because you're just like, it's just very vulnerable. Even if I'm doing it to like my closest friend, it's still like, this is like your artwork for the first time, like showing someone, and then you're open, and then they're like, nope, we don't like this, or add this, or change this around, whatever. But you have to go through multiple iterations in order to actually produce something good. So that was really great to like sort of get you out of your comfort zone. And then other small logistical things, like when you get on stage, you have to, like, if you take the microphone out, you have to move the stand to the side. Things like that, you know.
So it definitely sounds like it's not as easy as you just go up there and you're like performing. It sounds like it's definitely an art, and sort of you have to work through it. So just as we wrap up, what advice do you have for aspiring comedians?
For aspiring comedians, I would say that the most important thing is, first of all, to enjoy it, and to, I would say, write about what you're passionate about, or talk about what you're passionate about. Don't force it, because then it's clear if it's forced. And then take it at your own pace. That's sort of what I'm learning. Oftentimes when you first get into comedy, they're like, you must be doing like 15 sets a week, otherwise you're not on track to like becoming, I don't know, like Jerry Seinfeld. Like you need to, you know what I mean? But there are so many different paths, and there's so many different ways to do it. And as long as it remains something that you love and you're good at, I think that's the most important thing.
I think that's really valuable advice. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Salma.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.